call to order this meeting of the Susquehanna Township Board of Commissioners. I would note that all commissioners are present physically and virtually. Commissioner Williams has dialed in and is available electronically. We did meet in executive session to discuss matters of personnel and real estate. And at this point, we will have a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. And if I could ask that Lieutenant Tittner lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. We did have a couple of things to discuss in the executive session. Now all is right with the world when we're out here, so, or at least with the township, I hope. First off is petitions, complaints, and suggestions from citizens. Does anybody wish to address the board tonight? Okay, hearing none. We'll move to the approval of minutes from our, it says July 23rd, July 12th board meeting.
Gosh. January 12th. January 12th.
January 12th, 2020.
Right. We can't go forward in time.
Second?
As corrected.
That meeting will be great. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. In deference to our guests who are here tonight, we're going to change the order of the agenda just a little bit. And we're going to move up to number 1. This is an action on an ordinance resolution. It's a resolution of the Susquehanna Township, Dauphin County Board of Commissioners ratifying a collective bargaining agreement with the Susquehanna Township Police Association effective January 1st, 2023, expiring December 31st, 2025. Mr. Probolko.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very happy to present to you for your consideration this evening a resolution ratifying a new collective bargaining agreement with the Susquehanna Township Police Association for a term beginning retroactively to January 1st, 2023, expiring December 31st, 2025. The Township and Police Association have concluded bargaining in good faith under Pennsylvania Act 111. And I would like to express my appreciation to the members of the bargaining team, especially Sergeant Osman, and as well as Public Safety Director Rob Martin, the Administrative Personnel Committee, and all the Board of Commissioners, as well as Attorney Mike Miller for your work and assistance in getting this contract to the point where it is today. With that, I'm pleased to recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt this resolution this evening. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Engel.
I move to adopt Resolution 2023-R-1.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Commissioner Filona. Comments or questions from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 3 more years, right? All right. Next up is call up Public Safety Director Martin.
Mr. President, thank you. Tonight, we have 2 promotions, but before we do that, I thank you for indulging us in the presentation of an honorable discharge certificate to a retiree. I want to call up Lieutenant Brian Tinner. One of the important aspects of nights like tonight is I get to tell you, the board, I know you know our police department and how wonderful they are, but I can give you some insight into the individual personalities and who they are, and I think that's vital. So yesterday, Lieutenant Brian Tinner retired from his active sworn service after over 26 years with our police department, but I want to tell you a little bit about him. He has served as a corporal, sergeant, lieutenant through his 26 years. He holds a bachelor's degree from Penn State and a master's degree from the American Military University. Prior to his service with our department, he served 5 years active duty in the United States Army in the 82nd Airborne Division, as well as the Special Forces, serving in both Central and South America. He comes from a family of service. His father served in the U.S. Army, and his father was a storied trooper in the Pennsylvania State Police, serving in this area for many years. Over his career, he's received the Order of Honor Medal, 2 Award of Merit Medals, 3 life-saving medals, too many letters of commendation, letters to speak to, and a Medal of Valor for a gun battle with the county SWAT team. But more than that, he has been absolutely dedicated to this township. In my 35 years with this township, there have been few more dedicated employees, servants of this township than Brian Tinner. And his work as a firearms instructor, less lethal munitions instructor, use of force instructor, especially over the past years, with our nation in instructing our officers how to properly use force, de-escalation. He led the efforts through our ICAT training a couple years ago and became a de-escalation instructor, which really we were one of the first in this area to grasp and move forward with. His service with here will abide, and his institutional knowledge is very difficult to replace. And when you wear a uniform, there's a lot of things that come at us, but one of the things that means the most to us is this honorable discharge certificate. So from the Susquehanna Township Police Department, this is to certify that Lieutenant Brian Tinner was honorably discharged from the Susquehanna Township Police Department on the 25th day of January 2023. This certificate is awarded as a testimonial of honest and faithful service. LT, thank you.
If I'd been asked to speak last night, I probably would have gone today. I had to hide in the gym before I walked out. There's an old saying, may you live in interesting times. And the people that said it meant it as anything but a blessing. But for me, having lived in interesting times, it was a blessing. Because for the last 3 decades plus, I have gotten to work with some of the best people in the community, the mid-state, the country, and the world in public service. I have been led by, I have been trained by, and I've had the honor to lead some of the biggest souls in the world, whose capacity for self-sacrifice, accomplishing a mission in kindness, makes a person step back, self-reflect, and come out humble. So I would just like to thank the current board, Chief Martin, Mr. Krabolka, the staff, the officers, for the opportunity to continue to serve in some small capacity. And I would like to thank all the past board members and everyone that made it possible for me over the years to continue to serve and to continue to strive. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well said.
Thank you, LT. We have 2 promotions. We have a promotion to lieutenant, we have a promotion to sergeant. I'm going to start with the sergeant. Before I call Sergeant Tadif Ferrapino up, I just want to say a few words. The 2 men that we're about to promote, when I think of these 2 men, I'm very appreciative that they're on our department serving our citizens. When I talk about them, you're going to see that they come from 2 different worlds. But together, they are one in their service. As a department, we practice community policing in every time slot that is available to us. I read recently that scientists have found that to form a habit, you have to do something every day for at least 3 weeks. Well, we've practiced community policing for decades, so now it's in the marrow of who we are. These 2 men have been practitioners of community policing for our department with our community, and they will continue to be with the ranks that they achieved tonight. Going forward, they're going to be challenged in an uncertain world. But it takes teammates, all of those officers behind them, it takes teammates for all of us to be successful. And I read recently that Hank Aaron was asked months before he passed away, what did he feel was his greatest accomplishment? He said, scoring runners from third base. If you know the game of baseball, you know when there's somebody on third base and you're in that batter's box, you've got a mission. And you've got to get that person home. So for Hank Aaron to say that, it indicates the team player that he was. And the success of our department going forward will be for everybody to be a team player with each other. And having said that, I want to call up Corporal Julio Ferrafino. Great story with this young man. Emigrated to our country at age 7 from the country of Nicaragua. In his young life, after immigrating to our country, he spent a couple years in New York City before his family moved to Jersey City, New Jersey. While at high school in Jersey City, he credits his Marine Corps recruiter for changing his life. And he entered the Marine Corps in 1996 out of high school and served for 10 years on active duty. Upon leaving active duty, he became a federal police officer for 2 years. He entered service with our department in 2008. During his service with us, he has been a patrol officer first class, a corporal, our school resource officer, and a field training officer. The future Sergeant Ferrafino has epitomized our commitment to community policing and has touched many lives in Susquehanna Township. And I can tell you, when he worked Patrol Beat 1, which is Commissioner Barczyk's area, on our department, he became known as the mayor of Montrose Park. That's how much of an impact and how many citizens knew him up there. And that's really what our department is all about. So with that, it gives me great pleasure and an honor to read this promotion of the certificate of promotion to you. To all who shall see these presidents greeting, know ye that reposing special trust and confidence in the patriotism, fidelity, and abilities of Julio Ferrafino, that you are appointed to serve as a sergeant, Susquehanna Township Police this 26th day of January, in the year of our Lord, 2023, and in the 247th year of the independence of the United States. And with that, Commissioners, I recommend his promotion on the civil service list to the rank of sergeant.
Mr. President,
Commissioner.
I move to promote Corporal Julio Ferrafino to the rank of sergeant, effective immediately.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Napper. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Mrs. Ferrafino will now do the pinning, and if you happen to make a mistake, it's okay.
Awesome blood.
See some blood.
Good job. There you go. Thank you. Call up Sergeant Verbos. Sergeant Andrew Verbos. Proud graduate of Bishop McDevitt. Sarge has a bachelor's degree in forestry from Penn State University, another Penn State grad. He's received 2 life-saving awards. He's a 3-time Officer of the Quarter recipient, Order of Honor Medal, and received the Medal of Valor for a use of deadly force incident with a homicide suspect. Lieutenant Verbos has served on our department in the following assignments: less lethal instructor, pistol and rifle armorer, assistant accreditation manager, peer support officer, and on the Dauphin County Accident Reconstruction Team, and grant writer. And let me just speak it's one thing to say these things, but Sergeant Verbos, we would not be accredited if it wasn't for Sergeant Verbos. And this recent PCCD grant that we received over $1 million, we put a great team together, came up with great ideas, but the man that I appointed to write that grant is standing right next to me. And he brought it home. Talk about scoring somebody from third base. He got it home for us. We got the second largest grant in Dauphin County. And we can thank this gentleman for that. So having said all these great things about Andy, to all who shall see these presents greeting, know ye that reposing special trust and confidence in the patriotism, fidelity, and abilities of Andrew Verbos. We appoint you to serve as a lieutenant of police, given under the hand of Headquarters Susquehanna Police Department 26th day of January, in the year of our Lord 2023, and in the 247th year of the independence of the United States. Mr. President, I recommend Andy Verbos is promoted to the rank of lieutenant.
Mr. President,
Commissioner Engel.
I move to promote Sergeant Andy Verbos to the rank of lieutenant, effective immediately.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Pine. Any comments? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Lieutenant.
President, that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Board.
Chief, can we get a picture
Absolutely.
of the officers?
Recipients, yes, come on. LT?
LTs. Sergeant. Congratulations. Just close. Congratulations.
So happy for you. I mean,
All right. Congratulations. All right. Take care of our mom. Whoops.
you're warm. There you go.
Good job. All right. Good luck, sir.
Good picture. Send it to me.
Won't be going far. Oh, man. Come on. Oh.
Where do we go? Here, switch with me. Sorry. There we go. I'm blocking less people out.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Smile.
Moving on, next up in our order will be a presentation from the Susquehanna Township Emergency Medical Services, STEMS. Executive Director Don Kuntz, is he here? Hey, Don. Keep the 3 minutes, okay?
I'm sorry?
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Just
I can
kidding.
do that.
No,
I'm going to actually take a minute of that and just say, from a professional standpoint, I've been in this as a paramedic since 1980, still working and providing care. And I can tell you from all the departments I've ever worked with, this is the #1 police department I've ever worked with.
thank
You
you.
should be very proud of them. From community policing to finding a solution to problems instead of making problems, they are no par. They are absolutely there.
Appreciate that.
So,
Let's talk about ambulances and stuff.
good.
Okay.
I think all of you have this in your packets, EMS in crisis. And I'm going to brief through that even faster than what that is. And I appreciate all the time to talk about that tonight. First off, I'm not here asking for money. That's a good point to start with. And what I'm really going to cover with you is not our issue, but it's a national issue. And Be happy to address some questions, but the big issue today in EMS is that traditionally, we get paid to transport patients. We don't get paid to sit around and wait for calls. That's the readiness portion, just like a fire department. And yet, when we go to transport patients based on basically Medicare and insurance reimbursement, our collection rate, and this is typically nationally, is less than 50%. So everybody says, just raise your rates. Well, we're bound by contract to say our rate can be $2,000 and we'll get paid X amount of dollars. And then that's further complicated by, as an example, Medicaid has even reduced rates. So in some cases, perhaps less than $200 for an ambulance transport, when it costs me more than that to put people on the street and be ready to go. This past year, we responded to about 6,200 calls, and we transported a fair number of those. But also keep in mind, there's a lot of calls that we go out for public assist. Police department needs help with evaluating perhaps a DUI patient, someone who's fallen down the steps. We often go out in the middle of the night to pick perhaps your grandmother or grandfather up off the floor and put them back into bed. We don't get paid for those kind of calls, but we're ready and able to do that. So this problem really boils down in the United States as simple as this. 50% of what we do is readiness, waiting for a call. 50% is the response issue. And we only get paid for the response issue. So the issue that we have tonight is that out of 68% of the calls we transport, 75% of them are in our primary areas. And we respond to, of course, Susquehanna Township, Pembroke, and Paxton. The reality is 25% of our calls are mutual aid calls, meaning we're going to the city, we're going to Lower Paxton. We go on calls as far as Likens. That's a haul for us. But when there is nobody else in the area, we fall as mutual aid, and we are required to respond. We are also required to be staffed 24 hours, 365. If we are not, our license can be pulled for not providing the service. We are under a lot of restrictions in what we're able to do. So one of the challenges, of course, is money. We do provide a membership program. Probably most of you probably have a membership or have seen that. But our penetration, even within all three of our communities, is roughly between 12 and 14% response rate. Although we appreciate that, that accounts for around $90,000 to $100,000 a year. In our close to $2 million budget, it's a small percentage of what we do. So, although we continually try and strive and look for grants, as everybody else does, income, and there have been some grants, even on the Pennsylvania side, governmental level, that have been helpful. Grants don't run a business. You all know that. They are great to supplement and add to the service levels you can give. But who pays for it the following year? Who pays for it 5 years from now? And of course, there are a lot of unfunded mandates. We provide a level of service out in the community at a medical expertise that at times when we go in the emergency departments, they don't match that level of expertise that we're required to provide. That's sort of scary. So our challenge is we're looking for options. And we're looking for, from here, is really some guidance, some support in looking for other options. And we've gone down through a lot of them. So one of them is, of course, well, gee, we sit between two big hospital systems. Join them. They have the same problem, but they also have a unique solution too. Is that hospital-based EMS focus is maximizing, of course, their readiness portion, meaning when they have crews waiting to go on a call, they can use them to transport patients. And we all know what ER waits are, transfer patients from one hospital to another hospital for specialty care. We all endorse that, but who's moving those patients? Those hospital-based EMS services. And when they're not in service, guess what we have to do? We have to go and cover their calls. Again, 25% of our call volume is part of that issue. And again, we're required to do it. So the challenge is, just like the police department, we believe that we provide a different level of service, a community-based level of service that hospital-based systems have trouble delivering, because their primary focus is certainly emergency response, but also the issue of moving patients within the system. That's one of their primary focuses. So we've looked at, well, what about mergers, such as with South Central? Again, there's some loss of identity and control over your local service and how it's performed. We, of course, are very thankful for the board here, ongoing, long-standing support of EMS in our communities. And you know what those numbers are. And greatly, appreciate it and can't do it without it. But at the same time, when we look at the totality, those numbers are pretty small. And when we go to our other communities, that contribution level is even smaller. So we've looked at those as in options. One of the options that is becoming very popular, not only in Pennsylvania but nationally, is the option of creating EMS authorities. Just like a water authority, municipal authority. And the reason for that is what we're trying to transfer, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is we have a membership program, but at 12% penetration, it doesn't provide enough. So the thoughts are, again, there are several companies that are doing that, and in your information, the one you may have seen in the papers is in the Elizabethtown area. And I put their website in. They're doing a great job of presenting that. But essentially, we're trying to convert a membership program as a, quote, mandatory membership, so that there would, when you need that, we're ready to go and expansion of services. Some of the challenges we've had just from a budgetary side is we have no, essentially, funding of our depreciation for vehicle replacement. All of those always have to come up as a loan or, discretionary income that we might have. Building remodeling, we're, busting at the seams in our building across the street from Station 32. When that was put up, the organization was totally different than what it is today. Those kind of things, we don't have accounts set up to do that. So where we're working from today is income we bring in from reimbursement, or membership program, or grant programs, and in addition to other items that we're working on along the way. So some transport work, but again, in today's environment, it is very difficult to find staff to do what we do. Part of that is a payroll issue. I'm just talking to my son who's out looking for a job, and he doesn't want to consider anything that pays him less than $20 an hour to start. My EMTs start at $15 an hour. So I'm competing with Sheetz, Amazon, Target, you just name it. And so who wants to work shift work, get up in the middle of the night, run out on a call, someone might throw up on you, bloody, the trauma of potentially handling certain patients, of carrying that with you. For a lot of people today, they're just saying it isn't worth it. So really what I'm here asking is consideration to open the discussion to say, is this something that is viable for us to do within Susquehanna Township EMS, and something that our communities are willing to go down that road and say, is it worth looking at this and seeing that it's survivable? If it's not, our outcome probably in the next perhaps 3 to 5 years is at our current funding levels and what we have in reserves, we simply will not be here. And the options always ride with the communities. In Pennsylvania, as you know, you are obligated to designate but not fund EMS services. So tomorrow you could turn around and say, Hershey, come in and provide the service. That's always your option. We don't think that's the community best option, obviously sitting on this side of the table. But that's, again, the trip that we'd like to see us go is to look at that. I've already done the same presentation to, of course, the community managers, is how we got here. Already presented to Pembroke, and soon on the schedule to do it to Paxton. So not just here on bended knee to the township, but also looking at the other communities. So hopefully that was quick enough. I know it's a lot of information to digest and perhaps didn't know anything about it. But if you want questions and answers, be happy to do that for you.
Maybe I missed it. What is the fee for the membership?
There's essentially 3 levels of membership. It goes essentially from 50, 65 to 75.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I was looking, as I went over this earlier today, for solutions.
Yes.
And you have a page on it, Solutions Explored. I noticed that the authority model is in bolder, heavier print than the other proposed solution. Is that what you're recommending that we consider? Or?
I think it's something we need to explore. Based on our research, is what we essentially want to get to is that if, any of the communities, but primarily because you are our biggest community that we serve, if you turn around and said, we're not interested, then we really need to look at some true other options. And one of those may be, we need to perhaps negotiation with, again, from the hospital systems or with South Central to create a merger to say, we have to take the authority model off the table. Because without our communities to support it, it won't happen. And that's what we're finding, again, from research and other organizations, that's their challenge too.
Well, you mentioned on the authority side, our option that it's going to be mandatory, right?
That's essentially an authority would be.
Yeah. So, and obviously, it's just like, and pardon my ignorance, this one. What are you looking at? Like, if you mandate the fee for everyone, if you become an authority with all the 3 territories,
Right.
what are you looking at in terms of rates?
The study that we've done so far is essentially the membership rates. And I, ballparking a little bit because there's going to be exemptions for those who can't afford it. A variety of things. There's business rates. There's multi-dwelling units. All of that. So, but in the simplified terms, is we essentially would overlay basically the membership prices as probably what they are today. Reserve the right to be able to still bill for those who have insurance, because we're trying to match the reimbursement with the membership in order to keep the membership or the authority price as low as possible.
Now, because you'll be mandating everyone to pay, so to speak, and you mentioned earlier that if you get a call from Lycans and you're the only one available, you still have to go. And people there are not mandated to pay. So what kind of level of service then would be guaranteed?
To the local area.
Yeah, who are actually paying.
So the issue is that If you look at even the fire departments, if there's a large fire on the West Shore, in Lower Paxton, wherever it is, they're obligated to go also. A little different scenario, but it is not just us that are obligated to go under mutual aid. But they would certainly get billed. Obviously, our issue is that we're trying to maintain, and why there is a mutual aid system, is that redundancy in that system allows us to go and help someone else, and then perhaps in 2 minutes, maybe the city's going to free up, or Lower Paxton is going to free up and come in and back us up.
Okay.
I don't know of anywhere in the country, other than a paid contracted service, perhaps as a city, that mandates X level of service, and you are not allowed to go outside of that city in those kind of responses, because mutual aid is everywhere as a response, category.
So you're saying as an authority, if you were an authority, current funding sources like billing through insurance, applying for grants, et cetera, you'd still be able to do.
Yes.
But now you'd have the ability, like the storage authority, of sending out quarterly bills or whatever it would be.
Yes. Yes. So there is the ability for an authority to also be a 501c3 to enable you to get the same kind of grants and funding that we do currently. And in some situations, because we're not governmental, that would also open up some doors for some additional fundings on the governmental side, because it is an official governmental body as an authority, as I understand it.
But it's also a 501c3.
Yeah. So, trying to keep your fingers in as many of those. Now, on the other side, I failed to mention, of course, that means that the level of contribution from those communities directly, such as what you are providing to us currently, all of that would go away. I mean, that would be your discretion to do that. But the assumption is, in our models, that funding streams go away. So that stays in your budget. Because then we become independent, per se, in that sense.
So if, in billing purposes, if you become an authority and everybody pays a certain amount of money to be quote-unquote a member, then if somebody needs transported, then you accept their insurance and don't send them a bill for the balance as an authority, whereas right now you still do.
Correct. That is correct.
So that goes away then too.
So, and to extend that just a little bit, obviously if someone does not have insurance, they're still going to get transported, they simply are not. Again, rules and regs of how you would set that up. There's also a potential that they may not get billed anyway after the fact. Simply, there's nothing to go after, so. The question often comes up, well, gee, you have someone who's out of state on Interstate 81, what do you do with that? They get billed. So you still have to have a billing component, because there are those, little nuances to patients that we see.
I'm sorry, with the billing aspect, if you're an authority and everyone has to pay, if the person has insurance who's being transported, that's fine, but if they don't have insurance because they're paying their quarterly or whatever it is, they don't get, I want to make sure I'm understanding this, they don't get billed because they don't have insurance, because they're paying through their fees through the authority. Is that correct?
So in our current membership program, if we transport you, we've always reserved the right to bill your insurance and not balance bill you. Meaning, what's left, we don't come after you and say, we're going to send you a collection unless you pay that. So that sort of same model is trying to be moved over, because it's understandable and people have used it for so many years. It makes sense to them.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to ask is, just using the current model, if you're paying that membership, but you don't have insurance, and you get transported, do you then bill the patient if they don't have insurance, if it's over, because the membership fee is not going to cover the service?
Right, it doesn't, but that's That's one of those, because we have a huge amount of write-off, as most ambulance services do, because of lack of insurance. Again, because when we go out on an emergency call, a 911 dispatch, we have really, if the patient says they want to go, whether it's for a hangnail or it's a cardiac arrest, we have to transport them. That's the unfortunate way the system is built today. Any other questions?
I have more comments than questions.
Okay.
So after having served as a liaison to STEMS for probably close to a decade, I think I have a fair understanding of some of the issues and how the service works. So just to highlight a couple things, I mean, response time is important, and STEMS has an excellent response time. I mean, on a personal note, I was somewhere not in STEMS first due with an older gentleman who had a medical episode, and we waited a long time for an ambulance. So if that's one of the things you're not familiar with, I mean, if STEMS were to go away, yeah, someone would fill the vacuum, but there's no guarantee of what the service will be, because we do have an excellent response time, and minutes matter when you're having a medical emergency.
And I will say that, to add on to what sort of started the discussion, was it is really a team effort. So that work that I talked about with the police department is, they have many more units on than what we do. And they're often at the scene of a call before we are. And in some cases, such as drug overdoses and some other thing, they start care. And we work hand in hand with it. Again, many of these officers, come from a background is that's just what they do. They are responders. They're not just police officers, they're responders. But when we get there, they're often very willing to do CPR, to carry bags, help with the family, all of those kind of things. So that teamwork effort is really important. Now, I did...
If I could just finish my points that I was trying to make for you. So, and anybody who doesn't have a STEMS membership should, because the cost of an ambulance ride could be $400 to $1,000 or more. So, and nobody ever plans on needing an ambulance ride for the most part. So, I mean, it's a great insurance policy. So you really should have that. And also, the state legislature should be doing something, because, as you started out saying, it's a crisis. It's not just Susquehanna Township, it's not just STEMS. So that's who should be lobbied as well.
And we have lobbied them, and they have provided some funding. One of the challenges is, though, I'll just hold this up. So I often get into these discussions when people say, this should be a countywide system. You're potentially absolutely right. Are they going to put any money up for it? That's not to say positive or negative, that's not what's going to happen. That's the reality, right? And I'm not being negative, I'm just saying this is the faced reality. They're not going to raise taxes to support EMS. And many communities are facing the same situation. So again, we're just trying to come back and say, how do we get our communities to help without having to essentially dig into their pocket to make this happen? And there may be some other options we haven't looked at, but we've been looking at this for over a year or more, behind the scenes, and now it's sort of time to pull the curtain back, because one of the challenges we're going to have as we go through these discussions is the rumor mill is going to start. STEMS is shutting down tomorrow. They don't have any money. They're losing people. They can't respond to calls. They can't afford new rigs. And some of that, is sort of like, that's the way it is, because when you start to talk about money, people are going to start to talk about the organization. And we've been around for a long time with these same problems, but COVID has focused these issues to such a fine point because of the huge cost increases that we've seen. We've all seen them. at times during it, what we normally would have paid $5 for a box of gloves that we need for every single call, if we could get them $40 and $50 a box, I mean, how do you cope with that? Those are the challenges. So, any other questions?
So compelling.
Probably run over on time.
No, that's fine. I was only kidding about the 3 minutes mark. This is an important topic, and I'm sure that you're aware that the township, as Jody mentioned and Fred has alluded to, both have served on the board. And the township has supported STEMs pretty healthily over the years.
Absolutely.
In terms of help with fuel, insurances. 1 year, I think, before anybody else was on the board but me, we bought an ambulance. And Fred, what was it, about 7 years ago, we came up with that $50,000 program?
Yeah.
$50,000 would be, if the board, the STEMS board would go out and raise $50,000, they could use a promise from Susquehanna Township to match their money, and 1 year, I think we got about 90,000. They raised 40,000, and I don't know where it's been since. I don't know if you do, Fred, or if you do, but my suspicion is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's just a $50,000 check now, as opposed to an incentive to get the community, actually the board of STEMs, to go out and raise money from their contacts who are significant.
Yeah, and, part of the challenge is that in some ways, we've tried, in addition to the membership program, a lot of items, but the competition for those dollars, donation dollars, and we get from the membership program, I can't quote you off the top of my head, I can get you that number, but with that, we get a fair amount of donation along with, somebody sends in a membership and I'm gonna round it up to $50 or $60, or sometimes we get a check for $100. And a lot of that comes out of, the blood pressure clinics that we do, from people that we go out for public service and, again, put them back in bed, a variety of other things. But I think you're right that from the board's perspective, those who are on the board today, other than probably Fred, sort of don't remember those days of going out and sort of, it's a matching kind of dollars.
Maybe it's time to remind him, Fred.
You're going back to when Elliot was there.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
And so it has been a challenge, but those are the kind of things that we're looking for, that assistance to sort of say, yeah, but here were the rules. I've been at STEMS for about 10 years. I was not involved in the board when those discussions were going on. I believe it was Elliot. And before that was, of course, Brock, who was sort of coming hat in hand. I know several times that he tells a story about coming to the board and saying, we're not going to make payroll, or we need an ambulance, or we need this.
Pretty much every meeting. Yeah.
And somebody, eventually he wore him down and they wrote a check, And, I look back and listen to those stories when he was here, and I was like, more power to you. That takes a lot of dedication, and of course, he put in, essentially half of his life into STEMS to make it what it is today. But that's what, we've built on. And those, who have the long memories and fortunately were around, holding anybody accountable makes sense.
Well, from my view, it certainly is an item that we can't ignore. Jody's point is very well taken. It's a service that we can't do without. And the fact that it stems, even though it would be involve other communities, it still has a Susquehanna flair. And I think people take pride in the fact that they have a community asset like that, right down on Short Street. And so the conversation will continue.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Obviously, if I can do anything else, just information, or you want to stop down and get a tour, or, even do a ride along, that's possible to do. And that sometimes is pretty eye-opening. in what the crews have to do, and I hate to say, put up with. And I'll give one last plug. We have some of the most, I'm not sure sometimes how to describe the staff that we have. They call it sort of a family environment. And to give you an example of that, we just hired a new young lady who's an EMT about 6 or 8 weeks ago. And it just so happens, all of you are aware that in Dillsburg, the fatal fire that was down there, that happened to be her grandmother. And as soon as we were made aware of that, instantly, my staff, people that we work with, instantly were, what can we do for you? Let's start a donation, a funding page, all these clothes and food, and essentially her and her grandfather ended up with the clothes on their back. And all of this is still showing up. We had one of our staff members say, you know, what size of shoes do you wear? He went and bought her a pair of boots that showed up 2 days later. That's the kind of, you know, people that you want coming out to serve you, right? Those who, as I always say, treat them like it's not only my mother, but your mother, right? That's the level of professional respect, and sometimes all they need to do is hold their hand on the way to the hospital. That makes all the difference. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Don.
All right, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
And you can renew your membership online, so you can just go to the STEMS website, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, next up is traffic studies. Dave, Chief?
I believe the traffic study request that's in your agenda was submitted by Commissioner Hissero. Staff is requesting authorization to proceed with conducting the study, and we would report on the results at a forthcoming meeting once the study's concluded.
If I may just add, Chief, when this is done, I'm going to strongly encourage, and you probably do it anyway, I think you probably do, whoever gets assigned the complainant to talk to him directly, and he really spent a lot of time and effort, and I think to get his perspective more would be a great thing. But I don't know, I'm just picking up here in the past year, I know speed bumps, cushions are not always feasible because of rules and regulations and whatnot, but you know, if it's possible there, that's something that should seriously be looked at from what I could gather from his complaint.
And we'll do that, Commissioner. We'll definitely, the officer doing the study, we'll sit down with the gentleman. But because of the nature of the study, with the speed humps, it's going to require canvassing in the neighborhood. So we'll be canvassing all of the neighbors because it requires a certain percentage of the neighbors to be in favor. So we'll be hitting that whole block. And essentially, it's the 2200 block of Boas, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll take it from there.
You don't need a motion on that, do you?
I don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, unless there's any objection, we can proceed.
Objections here. All righty. Any other traffic studies before we move on? Okay, next up is the
H2.
yeah, this is the discussion on mobile cart potential to be used for collection of refuse in the township. And I think that, is Joel here? There you are. All right. The show is yours, Mr. Washik.
Good evening, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here to just talk a little bit about, I know I was here a few months ago and there was a lot of issues with trash collection, and I tried to come up with some sort of solution that could better work to make sure that doesn't happen again. And one of the solutions that I thought of was installing mobile carts for trash collection. They're already in place for many residents for the recycling collection currently. But installing mobile carts for trash collection, which allows us to automate collection for at least a majority of the township. It wouldn't be the entire township, but they're a majority of the township. I do actually have some carts in here. I can wheel them in if you want to just take a look at them.
Ooh, demonstration.
Don't get too excited, I mean, they're.
It's like a commercial where the guy's cleaning his trash can.
It's trash.
Yeah, no one gets excited about trash.
Oh, wow.
Great. So,
That's a triple cadaver bike.
yeah, it's pretty big, but this is our standard 96-gallon cart, which would fit
A body.
Yeah.
No, three.
Put a decent amount in there. So this would be kind of for everybody that's on our regular service right now, which has the 4-bag limit. This is what, you can definitely put a lot of material in here for weekly collection. And then we also do have the low volume service for customers as well in the township. So that's why I brought this cart here too. Obviously it's a little smaller, but it's a 35-gallon cart. So it fits roughly one 32-gallon bag, which is what the current contractual limit is for that service. I mean, automated collection is just something that's happening in many municipalities. Many of the neighboring municipalities were already doing that sort of collection in. Susquehanna Township, East Hanover Township, South Hanover Township, and then plenty in Cumberland County as well. What's the benefit of mobile carts? I know they're big, that's probably scary for some people, but the benefit is they're pretty sturdy. You don't, like wind and everything, you're not gonna have these blowing down the street or anything like that. You're not gonna have litter around the township. They keep animals out as well, so you're not gonna have any, squirrels, whatever, any animal getting into your trash. They are fairly user-friendly. I do know that, like I said, that they're big, but the wheeled containers are pretty easy to just wheel it around, especially this one, it's pretty light. So, and then efficiency, that's kind of more on our end, but also on the residents' end, you just wheel that down, or wheel it out to the curb on your collection day. But efficiency on our end is more so for the trucks that we would be utilizing. And then safety as well, because if you notice, don't pay attention to that one, I did not put that in there correctly, but this bar here, even for the current collection vehicles that we have, they can pick that up, whereas so that the crews are not lifting containers into the back of the trucks. Doing that all day tends to cause injuries over time. So how would this change the current contract? Not really. There'd be very minimal changes. I know there would be some, we would have to look at the ordinance, obviously, but these would be provided at no cost to the residents of the township. We would, which is roughly, I did a rough estimate of how much these would cost to install into the entire township. It's roughly $600,000 to do that. We would take care of that cost. We would obviously honor the rates that are in the current contract for service then as well. So there wouldn't be any additional fee for that, but we would have to keep the current extension rates what they're set at for the rest of the contract. Like I said, regular service customers would receive the 96-gallon one. Low volume customers would receive the 35-gallon one. And like I said, there's already the 64-gallon recycle carts for many residents. I know not everybody uses them, but even in the automated collection system, I'm sure you've seen the round 32-gallon bins. There's no lid on them or anything like that. Those can still work in the automated collection system as well, because the automated arm comes out and it can still grasp that container. So do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do.
There's plenty.
If that gets damaged, wear and tear, I assume then it gets replaced at no cost to the customer?
Correct. Yes, we replace them.
I've actually had 2 trash cans mangled in the past year from breaking the handles off and whatnot, and I mean the customer, I guess at this point with their own cans are liable for that, correct? Whereas this
Yeah, it's definitely, it's provided by us, therefore we will replace any damaged containers over time, and it happens.
I can attest to that.
Which areas of the township would not be serviced by these?
These would still, we would give them to everyone.
Okay,
They would go to everyone. I'm
Okay.
just speaking from the automated collection standpoint with the specific truck that.
okay,
the one
so
man
every
truck.
resident.
I'm sorry for not being clear with
No,
that.
that's fine.
people are on the trucks now?
Currently, it's a two-man crew, basically, a driver and then a helper on the back of the truck.
So with the one-man truck, you save 50% of the cost of running the route.
Roughly, I mean, there's definitely different wage structures for the different positions, but yes, there's some labor cost savings there.
Okay.
How does the larger container here compare to what's currently used for recycling?
Slightly bigger, same footprint for the most part, like at the base, but slightly taller and I guess this part up here is a little bit wider.
What are we doing with the existing trash cans?
That's always a question that I get. Either residents can keep them for access recycling, if they have that, or if they would like to get rid of them, they just leave a note on it and we'll take it.
Oh,
And I know there probably are some customers in the township that are renting a larger container like this. Probably not too many because they wants to rent the container, but we wouldn't need to install one for them. But again, if any damage ever happened over time, we would replace theirs.
I actually bought myself a container that has that little handle on it, and I've seen your two-man crews use that handle to dump it into the back of the truck. And I'm wondering, could I continue to use my own? I don't know if I want something that large to maneuver around, because you rarely have that much garbage.
I mean, you could, yes, simply yes. At that point, whenever, over time, like I said, they do get damaged. So if it did get damaged, we would replace it with one of ours, if that's acceptable to you. But we wouldn't replace the container at that. Like,
Or would someone have the option of taking the smaller container instead of the larger one?
if they'd like to, yes.
Okay. And how would they let
They would
you
just have
know
to
that?
contact with
Oh,
us
okay.
and assure us to switch the container out.
Okay.
So your question though, if you're using your own and you go to the automated, does that create a problem? Because like, just a traditional trash can it be picked up by the automated? Because otherwise then the driver's got to get out and that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, right.
So typically with the automated collection, they can. Those arms are going to squeeze that container though, and probably cause damage over time.
Yeah, my container I'm talking about is a handle just like those two.
Yeah.
Where to lift, where the arm can lift it up.
I mean, again, wear and tear happens to these containers over time in general.
Yeah, mine's
especially-
probably not as heavy as that, as those.
But we do have, these two sizes available if anybody does want them. But wear and tear does happen, we would replace them with one of ours.
But it does look like that, I guess, when we switch to this new containers or the service, then just say, hey, if you have an older one, you can use it. If it gets damaged, don't worry about it, we can bring you one.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, people might freak out that, oh,
Why'd I buy this container or something
yeah,
like that.
I bought it. I inherited from my grandmother, something like that.
So what happens with the large item pickup then? Because residents are permitted to put out the large item.
Yes.
So if you have a truck with one driver, how do they
Well,
dispose of the large
Couch or
items?
something, or
Yeah.
sofa, or.
So you'd be surprised at some of the things that those trucks can pick up, but at the same time, like I said, we wouldn't be completely fully automated with only one-man trucks throughout the entire township. There would still need to be the typical trucks that you're seeing around currently, so they would go and pick up those materials.
And so I'm just trying to understand the logistics because I already get calls, I'm sure we all do, complaints when items aren't picked up, so particularly large items. So walk me through how that works. The driver of the single truck calls somebody and they run over and pick up at every house that has a large item?
Yeah, they would communicate with each other
Okay.
to get the material cleaned up. The other option, which I always do try to encourage, is scheduling large items. You still get one per week, but you just reach out to our customer service department and schedule that ahead of time.
So that's 95 gallon, you said? And our current contract allows for 4, regular cans, so 30, 35 gallons? So that's more than would fit in that one.
Correct.
So what do you do with the excess?
I mean, if you do manage to fill that up, you could set one extra bag by the side of the cart, and the driver would have to get out and just, basically what would happen is he would lift it, put it in there so that he's not, put the bag inside of the cart and use the elevated arm to collect it in that situation. I have one of those sitting at home. Actually, I think I have a smaller one of those sitting at home, and I have a family, and I don't generate that much material every week. I know some people do, so, but you're allowed up to 4 32-gallon bags, so technically you could set out one extra bag.
I only ask because last week we set out 4. Yeah, we were house cleaning, and we had 3, the recycling bin was filled, so we had 2 extra recycling things. So when you get in a mood and you want to clean out your house, you can easily fill up one of those.
Sure, yeah. Just
A
make sure
little bit
you,
each week. A little bit each week.
make sure that
Thanks,
the ones that
Schedule
have
it. Time management.
like, food go in there and it's paper, it's animals. I've had that happen. If you've had a bag out that's not in a can, and they smell it, it's all over the place the next morning.
Oh,
It
yeah.
happened years ago, yeah.
Joel, I have a question, not about the cans as much, but about the fact that we would be potentially, reopening the contract in order to facilitate that, to allow that. I have been in favor of, and I'd like to advocate a very low volume exemption. And when I say very low volume, I'm talking about somebody who might be in the township less than 25, maybe even less than 20% of the time. You probably have gotten a call from such an individual. And, part of the problem is that people like that, when they're around so seldom, and if they're paying the normal lower price, when your guys come around to collect, they're not used to seeing this guy at all because, his volume is so low that he rarely has anything out. They don't pick it up. So he's been forced to, and I suspect this is a very small population, which I think would have minimal impact on the overall fiscal, the contract. But it just seems to me like that it would be appropriate for some kind of a very low volume exemption. Do you have any sense of how?
So we do offer, the current contract allows us to offer an exemption to a resident that requests it for, I don't even think it specifies if there's a reason. Typically, it's for people that have a vacation home and they go down south for the winter or something like that. I think it's up to 6 months out of the year that he is allowed to be exempt from the contract.
Right. Well, this is an even greater, it's much less than 6 months. I guess that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I can think on that a little bit more.
Okay.
Would you accept a giant bag of trash?
Well-
Just like a giant bag, like the grocery store bag?
Well, we're billed quarterly, right? So it's quarterly, and what's the low volume quarterly? It's like 40.
40, I have it here.
So if he's exempt half the year, he'd have to pay $80-some for the year? And
Well, for service that he's not using, I would suggest
well, we could
that.
say people don't, yeah.
No, I'm talking about somebody who's just not around, I'm not trying to open a Pandora's box or a can of worms.
For $80-some, that's.
Well, for some people, $81 is a lot of money.
Yeah, I definitely, we can definitely set up the exemption for the current contract. You would just need to call in and let us know, and we could exempt it.
Thank you.
All right, so if we do come to terms, and I'm going to suggest we set up a committee of commissioners and staff to sit down with you and explore options, but if we do come to terms, as Mr. Napper indicated, what are we going to do with potentially, 4 cans per house, 10,000 addresses? You're looking at 40,000 unemployed trash cans. So you're saying you'll pick them up? Yeah, I guess hoping
Yeah,
that
it
it
would
won't
be,
be
it
on the
would,
same day.
we couldn't do it all in the same week, but it would take time, because that's adding extra tonnage to the truck, which then causes us not to be able to dump the material in time at the incinerator. So we could, that would be like, we would have to schedule something where, 1 week, I don't know, say this board gets their extra containers collected or something like that. We could work through that, but it would just take some scheduling.
Maybe like a Christmas tree thing, the garbage pickup, can pickup week.
Hey, maybe that's the way we do
Joe,
it.
well, you're here, the one last thing, I'm sorry not to belabor this, but on the recyclables, we had that issue last summer. We worked that out, that it was, we had the more expanded. And my recollection was that there was supposed to be a notice that goes in the last bill. I don't recall seeing that. I'm trying to, because
It was supposed to be, it did not make it into there in time for the billing to go out, but it should be in the current bills that are going out very shortly if you haven't gotten it yet.
okay,
If it's not, then I will make sure, I apologize, I think it would be subcontract, like, it's a different billing company that I have to get that.
okay.
Question, just that you're talking about the containers again. I've noticed that people will often use many containers for yard waste. I mean, in fact, I've seen some of my constituents with what look to be a dozen or more yellow barrels for that. How is that? How does that work? How does that process of obtaining? And couldn't, I guess, regular trash cans be used for yard waste as well? I mean, how does that work?
It gets a little bit complicated, and the only reason why I mean that is, so these lids are shut typically.
Right.
And if it's sitting with the rest of your containers, the crews on yard waste collection day aren't gonna go by and make sure that it's yard waste or recycling. So we prefer it to be in those round, open bins so that we can at least see that it's yard waste, or in a biodegradable bag, or in bundles, or anything like that. We do have yard waste bins available at Penn Waste. They would just need to give us a call. We can get one sent to them. Doesn't really help with your 12 containers that you do have sitting out, or your constituents, so, but it is an option, and we do have them available.
I have 1 yellow one and 5 other not yellow.
Right. And that's accepted?
Yeah. I will say, I mean, I look at your tonnage, the tonnage every quarter that's sent to the township, and yard waste is very popular in Susquehanna Township, so you're doing a great job with your program.
Okay, we could talk trash all night.
Nobody wants to.
What I'd look for is a motion to authorize the formation of the committee to work with staff and come up with goals and objectives and discussions with Penn Waste.
Also move.
Second. Moved, Mr. Hisro, and second, Mr. Pine. Any comments or questions? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
I like them. I like the big guy.
I don't have enough.
I need the big guy.
Like the 16 ounces?
They want to move them around.
32.
I don't have enough.
I fill up my recycle.
Really? Oh, you're biting.
Anybody, yeah.
So you wheel that big thing out and have a little.
Come to your office tomorrow.
Oh, but Mom,
There's already something.
All right, moving on to the agenda, contract with HRG. Dave, you want to kick that off?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I wish they could make them motorized.
So, provided with your agenda this evening, well, let me start over. We had a joint meeting with the Susquehanna Township Public Works Committee and the Authority Planning and Construction Committee in September to review some proposed road projects for the upcoming year, 2023. There was a pavement assessment that was done in 2022 by HRG, which is an update to the 2017 assessment that was done. And we have kind of developed a list of proposed projects in the wake of that assessment being completed. I apologize, if I stand corrected, it wasn't September when we had the meeting, it was just this month. Or my dates are getting in this agenda, they're all over the map, but anyway, the Public Works Committee has finalized its recommendation for 2023 road projects. They include the Goose Valley Road, Rose Hill Road, and Paxton Church Road, a segment of it, as well as a segment of Locust Lane. This evening, the board's asked to authorize an engagement with a retainer agreement with HRG for the development, design, engineering, and construction management or contract management for the 2023 list of road projects. Alex Greenlee or I can answer any questions that the board may have, but I'm recommending that we move forward with the retainer agreement to begin design of those contracts, of those projects.
Is there a motion?
Also move that the board authorize the township manager to execute the retainer agreement with HRG for the 2023 road project.
All right, is there a second? Second. Seconded by Commissioner Engel. Any discussion or comments?
Just a comment. Is there, for preliminary engineering, is there an estimate for that?
64.
64?
Is that right?
Yeah,
Alex?
correct. So this agreement would be for field view, design, cost estimate, bidding, construction observation, and contract administration.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I would just, following my own motion, if you can, are you going to make a small presentation or what? Okay. Well, then I would like to just get a clarification. The Paxton Church Road and Locust Lane, the segments, what segments we're talking about, just I wanted to make a note so I know exactly what we're talking about.
So, yeah, on that, I believe it's not Paxton Church Road, it should be Crooked Hill, right, from Apollo to Dogwood.
Wait, what was that again?
Crooked Hill?
Crooked Hill.
It's on there.
Crooked Hill to where?
No,
From Apollo.
Yeah,
It's noted on there, on the first.
correct. On our proposal, it's noted, and then Locust Lane would be from, I believe it's 26 to Edgemont Road,
You can't make this?
Glendale.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, are these road projects ones that are like major reconstruction?
Some are going to be some are going to be full repaving, and some are mill and overlay.
Okay. So are these the only roads we're working on in the township this year?
There are also segments of road that will be repaved as part of the authority's mini basin projects throughout the year. So we have mini basins 23B and C and 32A. So there's a significant amount of road improvements that'll be constructed through those projects, which would be funded by the sanitary sewer budget.
Okay. But as far as like repairs, so there's no other plans to do any other roads? I'm just looking, I'm thinking of the list that we covered, and I know there were different grades of the roads, and some were failing, and some were recommended for repairs that weren't in terrible condition because it was more economical to repair them now. So this is basically it. This and authority projects.
Correct. We'll do some maintenance. The Public Works Department really as pothole patching. Some basic road repairs if it's necessary. But yes, these would be the only ones that are recommended for capital contracts.
And this comes to about $1 million, I think.
That's the construction estimate, and of course, as Alex and his team work through the designs and firm up those construction estimates a little bit, if we have the ability to do more with the allocated budget, we certainly will come back to the board for recommendation. If we need to pare it back based on materials and labor, then we'll notify the board as well. Try to get as
I would
much done.
strongly encourage that if we have the funding to look at a few of the other failing roads that can be place to repair this year if there's room. And just two comments I wanted to make to have on the record. One, I did ask, and I believe it's supposed to be something prepared along this line, that we're going to get like a list of 20 to 25 of the top roads that are most disrepair based on this study that we just recently completed, so that we can perhaps work out a roadmap over the next 4 or 5 years of what should be targeted. And the second comment I wanted to make, HRG did recommend actually a different approach to the commissioners, one that focused on some of the critical roads in the township to try to keep them maintained so they don't get into bad shape. And I see a lot of merit to that, and that, at least from a personal level, I would be receptive to looking at that the next year to do something along those lines, because if we ignore the most critical roads and they go bad, it's going to be really expensive to fix them down the road. And I think that's where HRG was trying to make recommendations to get to those roads before they get, in condition where they would need to be substantially replaced. So I do see some merit, more than just some merit to that we really need to seriously consider that as part of our 5-year project.
Now, will this project include completing any missing sidewalk, if you're there ready?
Sidewalk installation is not a part of what's proposed, but again, if there's opportunities to capitalize on some of those projects and install sidewalks, we can present that.
How about anything about bike lanes or shared roads, something like that, that could be overlaid?
Yeah, there's certainly, again, something certainly that as we, and Alex and his team get into the design a bit, we can look at that and evaluate that based on our bike bed plan, which may be, kind of in the works at the time.
Yeah.
And try to plan accordingly.
Thank you.
Well, we just paid the whole.
Sure. Yeah. Any other comments aside from universal paving?
We got a blank checkbook, let's just write check.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Authorization of retainer agreement and advertising of the Edgemont Park ADA accessibility project for bid.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you can probably tell, Parks Director Doug Knaus is out of town this evening, so he's asked me to introduce this, which I will do so by turning it over to Alex Greenlee from HRG.
Okay, I don't have a microphone, I guess. Okay, as the commissioners are aware, the townships have been on a program to kind of revitalize the parks in the township, including Edgemont Park. As part of that revitalization process, Doug Knaus recommended, and it's also required from as a condition of the grant funding received, to bring the accessibility up to ADA requirements from the existing parking lot at Edgemont Park to the new playground facility. So as part of that, Doug asked that we put together an exhibit and cost estimate for the ADA access trail, which is essentially a switchback from the parking lot to the playground facility. So I don't see the exhibit in here, but it's essentially an asphalt trail with a handrail. And the cost estimate for that is included in your packet. So I believe Doug would be looking for authorization to go ahead and proceed with sending this project out to bid. As part of that, HRG was requested to provide a proposal for bidding and contract services, which is also provided in your packet, for $12,950, which I believe he's also requesting authorization to proceed.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that the Board of Commissioners authorize the Township Manager to execute a retainer agreement with HRG for bidding and construction management of the Edgemont Park 8A accessibility project in an amount of $12,950.
I'll say, you took my thunder because that was the third word and I was going to move late. But I will gladly second the project.
He beat you to the punch.
Settle down, guys.
Fred and Barney show.
I will say that this was presented to the RAC at last month's meeting, and they provided recommendations of approval for both.
Alex, if I can add before we take the vote, though, Frank and I were in executive session wondering what, on the document you provided where it had like the 90,000 plus as an estimate for the project, we of course submitted out the bids. Up above it, on the top of the page, it says 60% complete design. What did we mean by 60%? That kind of confused us.
That means this was a document for Doug and not to be provided but he shot it out, which is no problem. It's the accurate and final cost estimate. It's just it was meant for internal circulation. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No worries. It's our fault. It shouldn't have went out like that. But.
60% is 60%
right,
still
so,
passing grade.
Yeah. So typically at this point we'd be at like a 90%. So.
Yeah. All right, it's been moved and seconded and discussed. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. It includes two items. A list of the meeting dates for the RAC, Recreation Advisory Committee, number one, in your packets. And also the appointment of Brian Tittner as Administrative Operations Supervisor for the Police Department.
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved and second. Does any commissioner wish to comment or question either one of these two items?
I noticed we don't have bills paid on here.
That comes at the first meeting.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. Good call. No bells this month.
Yeah, Alex and I work for free.
We're gonna use that money to pay the whole township.
While we're at it, we're gonna get new sidewalks too.
HRG just got $77,000. Thank God they want the closer doors.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner comments?
None.
Commissioner Williams, do you have any comments?
I do not have any comments. Thank you.
And don't listen to Mr. Napper.
It's been a long day. Some of us work. I'm not retired. I've been up since 5. Let's go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you working to support us retirees.
Couple more months.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
It was a group
All
second.
in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Napper voted no.